Guys, thank you for tuning into the Basketball Performance Podcast. Today's the first time I'm doing a joint episode with my good friend Bryant Austin at his podcast, League MVP. He's a good friend of mine, and so today I'm going to be interviewing him, and he's going to be interviewing me at the same time. Bios, man, what's up?
Will, my guy, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm excited to do this. This is the first joint podcast that I've ever done.
Right.
And you know, when I was away in the States, I saw that you had a podcast. We were close, so I didn't even know you had a podcast. Why did you feel the need to start one?
Pandemic times, man. So you're just sitting around and you're thinking and trying to figure out how can you grow and how can you expand and reach out to, new listeners, new ears, and, the youth basically is what we do. So that's basically how I started. I started watching other guys' podcasts, Joe Rogan, of course, Shannon Sharp,
right?
JJ Redick, Draymond's got a podcast now. Everybody's in it, So I'm like, I get a lot of questions daily. I'm sure you get a lot of questions all day. And I'm like, I can't reach everyone, but this is a better way to reach more people and to, learn more things.
For sure.
All at once.
For sure. And for my listeners, what's the kind of message that you guys are trying to portray? Who's your audience? You mentioned it was youth, but what's the kind of message that you're trying to portray here?
It's just learning, I just want to, learn more and just have an understanding that you never can stop learning. So even at my age, I'm, 34 years old. I've been playing basketball for 20 years now, all over the world. And I still have so much to learn, and that when it comes to basketball, which is what I focus on, it's a small community. So once you get in that door, you're going to meet this guy and run into the same people in this small circle that you can ultimately grow with as a family. So it's more of that, like a family atmosphere of learning from each other, growing with each other, and opening the door for others to come in at the same time.
Awesome. And so we go way back, but just for my listeners, how did you end up in Hong Kong?
Long story short, oh man, that's like 20 years ago.
Right.
So how I ended up in Hong Kong was a crazy line of events. So I was in the G League before, NBA G League before I was in Hong Kong. Actually, the year before I came to Hong Kong, I was in Israel, Tel Aviv. So I had a series of injuries with my thumb. I broke my thumb while playing in the NBA G League, which ultimately sent me to play in Israel. While I was in Israel, I had a serious blood clot issue in my lungs, which ended up having me retire in, one of the toughest times of my life. Yeah. So, I thought I was done with basketball. It was time for me to, go to law school and figure out, my next path in life. Luckily, I sorted that out with a doctor and a specialist that allowed me to continue my career. And the door opened, and it was either go back to the G League. So I remember having this conversation. I was in Indiana playing with the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. And I remember having a conversation with the president, Jeff Potter, of the Mad Ants. And he was just like, if you come back, you're going to have to fight for minutes. You're still young. In my opinion, I would suggest that you go back overseas. And on top of that, I had a recent history with blood clots, which is, it's a kind of a dangerous situation to play with when it comes to, NBA Development League. You have to be real serious that you're okay, So they were kind of concerned with that. And then, of course, with the minutes. So I decided to go overseas, prove myself. It was always this thing like you need to go overseas, prove yourself, put up big numbers.
Then come back.
Come back because the guys that I will be competing with were 7-year, 8-year veterans. Yep. And then they would drop guys down from the NBA. So when I was there, guys would come down, Miles Plumlee. Yep. I played with Chris Middleton, Orlando Johnson. A lot of these guys would come down from the NBA and take up the time. And these are my positions.
And just for people who don't know, the Mad Ants is which G League team?
The Mad Ants now is with the Pacers. But when I was there, they had more affiliates. So it was Charlotte Bobcats of then, Detroit Pistons, Milwaukee Bucks, and the Indiana Pacers.
Okay.
Right. So let me quickly wrap this up. I then got a call. So there's a deeper story of how I got involved with NBA G League in general. But the NBA agent that got me the job in the G League, he eventually found out that I was healthy again.
Okay.
And that there was an opportunity for me to play in Hong Kong. So apparently Hong Kong had shut down the borders for like American imports for like 10 years.
Like back in the day.
Back in the day,
okay.
yeah. Maybe because of the budget.
Oh, right. Yes.
Or like the financial crisis or whatever. Yep. But he had played here, John Spencer. So John Spencer had played in Hong Kong for a while. And he hit me up out of nowhere. So I was in a dark time, like just thinking about, how I'm going to get my career back rolling. But I was excited at the same time once I got cleared by the doctors. And then it was just like God, made John contact me.
Yeah.
Because all the people in the world, John usually deals with higher level guys who are already in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So he's, working with these guys. But he reached out to me, hey, B, you got an opportunity. I'm going to send you to Hong Kong. I had no idea that Hong Kong even had basketball.
Right.
But I was like, I didn't even think, I'm send me the flight, send me the contract, and, I'm out.
So since you've been doing this for quite a while now, I mean, that's being a pro player is every kid's dream, right?
Right.
What's something that you wish you would have known coming out of college that you know now?
Man, so I just had this conversation with my best friend. We go back and forth all the time about where I am in my career and where I could have been.
Okay.
And the thing is that, once I learned the politics, and I recently did a video, a podcast on this about how you can get overseas and how you can become a pro, is the political side of things. I had no idea about what school I should go to. It should be Division I, should it be Division II, how to connect with agents, all these types of things. So this is what I wish I would have known back then. I was just, just in love with basketball. I didn't have a lot of people around me who knew exactly how to, which route that I should take to get to where I was going. And then what I would have really done is have higher expectations for myself. So this whole time, since I was 8 years old, I had this vision that I wanted to play overseas. And I'm not mad about it because my dream came true, right. and I'm living my dream.
Right, for sure.
But it could have been bigger. You know what I mean? I never envisioned myself with an NBA jersey on. It was always like, I'm going to go play in Europe. I'm going to play in Asia, these things. And it's, not to knock that, but then you realize when you get to that age is that what helps is that you went to Duke, you went to Ohio State, you went to Kentucky, you went to, even if it's a smaller school, a well-known school, and then you put up big numbers. And now if you do go to these small schools, now you got to destroy these at this level in order for you to get noticed, because the first thing I noticed when I met John Spencer, so this is going back into my story of how I got to Hong Kong. I went to a Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, and we had private workouts there.
How old were you?
This is later when I was 21.
Oh, so
22.
Okay. So this is like people that are looking to go pro.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. So it's not
after,
college. Got
yeah,
it.
after college, after NCAA. So, and what I learned there is I destroyed all of these guys who were top D1, D2, some of these top schools in these workouts, and I had agents, NBA agents, fighting to sign me, like literally, like arguing with each other. I'm going to sign him. I'm going to sign him. And I remember John Spencer was there. Andre Buck was there. Andre Buck is, I think, LaMarcus Aldridge. I think he's had Sebastian Telfair, PJ Tucker. He's their agent. Really great guy. And he's been in the game for a long time. I think he's been associated with LeBron James as well. And he was there, and a couple other guys were there, and they were very impressed with me. And then I remember the first thing, we all went out together, them and my trainer. And we were talking in there. The first thing they asked me is, what school did you go to? We have, where did you come from? And I'm like, I graduated from Indiana Tech,
right.
Division II. And they're like, oh man, they're all doing that to each other. Like, because they understand the game of, it's going to be hard to market you. It's going to be hard because in their, this is what I believe. And this is definitely what they were talking about. In their eyes, I was NBA talent. They could get me into the NBA, at least get me into the draft, get me into some workouts. So once they found out I went to a smaller school, they were hesitant of signing me because they understood it's going to be tough. And on top of that, financially, it will be tough for them because, you know, if you put your name on a kid who went to Indiana Tech
Right.
and he doesn't pan out, then you lose credibility.
Sure.
Whereas if you put your name on a kid from Duke and he doesn't pan out,
He went to Duke, right?
exactly, he went to Duke, and, you know, forget about it. But, you know, so I spent time with them. Sean Rooks was there as well. Sean Rooks played in the NBA for 10 years. He recently passed away, man. I love Sean Rooks. He gave me so many opportunities. Those three guys gave me a lot of opportunities. Sean Rooks used to fly me around the U.S., like to camps and stuff, and put me in front of guys, put me in front of Lakers. He put me in front of New Mexico Thunderbirds G League team, and on his own dime. He would fly me there. I didn't have any money at that time. I was 21 years old. Andre Buck would have me drive to LaSalle University and play against some of the top guys that were going into the NBA draft. And then John Spencer helped me, you know, get to Hong Kong, and he helped me in a lot of other ways as well. So, you know, you looking back, I wish I would have known what they taught me, that political side of it. And of course, you can get through the cracks by going through small schools. I'm not saying you have to go to Duke or you have to go to Kentucky, but I wish I would have known. I wish I would have done that, because I think I wasn't ready for it with that mentality that I had back then. But like you said, knowing what I know now, I would have prepared myself to at least get an opportunity to go to a bigger school to get more exposure, which is what it comes down to.
For sure. And there's just so many questions in my head right now, because you know that we have a nonprofit organization in Hong Kong that helps talented, underprivileged girls take their talents and go to the States. And in August last year, we actually got the first locally schooled girl in Hong Kong, in the history of Hong Kong,
Right.
to Division III in America. But she's had a great time. She was all conference third team her freshman year. She's notched up 10 points a game, and she's on the dean's list. So she's made
Right.
a very, very good transition. And I'm very interested to hear, because if you look at a lot of the NBA players nowadays, a lot of them like CJ, Dame, Ja, these guys don't come from the biggest schools. Right?
Correct.
They don't come from the biggest schools. So in your opinion, is there something there where if I go just a notch down, that and I end up like doing very well and I'm
Right.
busting everybody up, right?
Right.
Would you prefer that than me being sixth man on Duke?
Of course.
Right.
Of course. Now,
Okay.
the subtle difference between like when I was coming out, when
Yep.
we were coming out of high school, is that there's so much more ways to get exposure now.
Mm-hmm.
So it really doesn't matter where you go. You could be in the Sudan playing basketball on the dirt road,
Right.
and you could be on TikTok,
Right.
and a coach will find you.
Right.
You know, and as long as you're good enough and talented enough, you're going to find a way. This is why, you know, I don't really, you know, have regrets, because I am where I'm supposed to be.
Sure.
I believe that. But if you're talented enough, they will find you, especially now. It's
Yeah.
impossible not to get exposure now, you
Right.
know. So, but like you said, I would rather go to a smaller school, get that opportunity,
Yep.
because the experience is priceless.
Right.
You know, being able to play and fail, and, you know, have some success, and, you know, grow as a player and as a person as well, over going to Duke. Now that Duke experience is going to be
Yep.
great, because you're learning from, you know,
One of the best.
one of the best
Yep.
in one of the top organizations, and playing against some of the best talent. But like I said, there's nothing better than experience. You know, I take the experience over the coaching from Coach K. In my opinion.
Yeah, I would
you
too.
know? Yeah.
And I'm going to throw you a curveball here. So can you give me some advice for my girls who are all looking to go overseas to the States, play in the NCAA? I've got a good idea of where a lot of them could go, but how do I do the best job in order to get them the most exposure that I can to help these girls further their education and better their own lives?
Over in the U.S.
Yes, correct.
I honestly think you're doing a great job. I was going to ask you as well why you decided to focus on women's basketball. You know, I think that's amazing.
Thank
you know, and I think you continue to do what you're doing now, which is, you know, start from the ground up, give them a great foundation when it comes to their, you know, their training habits. You can't do so much when it comes to, we talked about this, when it comes to atmosphere and culture.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
this is the toughest thing that I believe is the culture, because, you know, where I grew up, the culture was breeding athletes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whereas it's difficult here in Hong Kong,
Very.
So I would say continue to do what you're doing and then just try to give them exposure to that culture, little doses of exposure to the culture of what they're going to be around once they get to the U.S. So it's not such of a shock.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. You have any questions for me?
Of course,
I don't want to take over this episode.
Yeah.
I don't want to take over this, but
Yes.
all very interesting stuff.
Why did you decide to focus on women's basketball?
So I did it purely out of trying to help people, to be
Right.
very honest with you. And so I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I had the good fortune of being able to go over to the States for high school and college. And I played at Division III level, so I'm not a stud like you. But when I still thought I got an amazing experience playing in the States, and I wanted to emulate that experience and bring it back to the people of Hong Kong. Now, I was a decent basketball player, but I wasn't by any means way better than anybody here. The reason I was able to go to the States was because my mother is American, and I come from a middle class background, and so we had the means to send me there. My mom has connections to people in New Jersey, and that's why I was able to go there. So
Right.
coming back, I wanted to give back to people who are just as talented, but more important, serious as I was, to give them the opportunity that I had, because I know why I was able to go. So hopefully I can be a mentor to those people and they make it way, way further than me. The reason that I focus on women is because when I did a little bit of research on how sports are run in Hong Kong, even though I'm from here, very, very little of it was going into women. Right. Very little. So from that perspective, I was like, I want to do the best that I can since this is such an underserved population, because I don't make any money off of this program at all, right? So when I got into it, I realized that because it's so underserved, that girls cherish the opportunity a lot more than the guys. Very honestly, they cherish the opportunity a lot more than the guys. And it could be because they are more mature in high school at that age.
Yeah.
Then, Biost, I realized that after digging into it, and I would love your opinion on this, that the level of girls here compared to the States is much closer. Like the level of play from a Hong Kong girl who is well-trained to an American girl that is well-trained they can put up a good fight. They can put up a very good fight. Whereas if you're talking about the men's side, the boys' side,
right,
there is a huge difference.
No, it's not even. Yeah.
Just look at
that.
Right. just you guys.
Right.
So there's a huge difference. And when I sent Yanni over, I was like, okay, athletically, I sent all her footage out to my friends in the States. I thought they were gonna come back and be like Division III.
Right.
All of them came back to said mid-major Division I.
Right.
Which was like, hang on a second, I'm missing something here. Mm-hmm. So Yanni is like my little sister. She's 5'9". She can grab the rim. She is faster than most of the boys out there. And the reason she didn't go Division I was because we weren't able to make a trip out there because of COVID, and you understand how seriously Hong Kong take COVID. Like, we would have to go over there. She's not American. We'd have to come back, quarantine. It's extremely expensive, extremely time consuming. We'd have to quarantine for 3 weeks. I can't make a 2-week trip, a 5-week trip, right? I still have to take care of my business and all that kind of stuff. So now, after getting Yanni over and her being such a success over there, I'm like addicted to this feeling of helping people. Like, addicted to this feeling helping girls for many reasons, because of all the ones that I stated there, but a lot of our girls are from underprivileged backgrounds. And I'll tell you what that means. That means getting welfare. That means having no parents at home. That means a lot of the time being physically abused. That means having no dinner to eat for 2 weeks. Like, we have all these girls, right, who come from a lot worse situation than I do. And I feel like as their coach, I'm not only responsible for their performance on the court, but I'm responsible for them as people. Right. And they don't have good examples of people to take care and love them. So therefore, myself, my wife, and my father-in-law decided it was time to pool in some money to help these girls. So when I found out that one of our girls wasn't eating dinner for 2 weeks, and the reason I I found that out is because, I'm so privileged. I have meals delivered to the gym, right? And here I am having meals delivered to the gym. And one day I couldn't finish one of my meals. And I was like, I knew that her background wasn't great, but I didn't know it was like that. So I was like, hey, why don't I take care of your dinner today? And she got emotional. I was like, okay, like why is she getting like this? And she was like, haven't had dinner in 2 weeks. Come to find out that there's no one lives at home. Her dad is God knows where. Her mom is living with another boyfriend. And all of a sudden there's this girl who hasn't eaten dinner 2 weeks. I call my friend who owns the food delivery service and is like, I need your help here. And now, and I'm going to give them a plug, Nutrition Kitchen deliver 3 meals a day to our entire team, meaning that 3 of our girls are guaranteed dinner every single night, right? And so a lot of the girls that I deal with, honestly, would be the equivalent of inner city kids in America. Right. And they may not get the best educational mentorship. So then my father-in-law sits on a nonprofit organization. He's a chairperson on a nonprofit organization for tutoring. So we take care of their tutoring as well.
Nice.
Right? And so it's like it was about basketball, but then slowly but surely it becomes more about the person than the sport itself, which I'm sure you can relate to.
Yeah. You said something you wanted to ask me in there. I don't know if you
go ahead.
No, you wanted to ask me a question in the middle of that. I don't know if you lost your train of thought.
I would love you mentioned about the cultural part.
Right.
And you're one of the best coaches I know in Hong Kong, and you train a lot of the youth here. What's one of the things that you feel like is generally lacking, because you have that American background as well, in the youth in general? Let's say youth is high school. Like, what's one characteristic they're lacking in globally? Then what's one characteristic that you see in Hong Kong that's maybe a little bit behind Europe, the States, all those kind of places?
Well, first, I appreciate what you just said. Secondly, let's focus here in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. Just like we just talked about the cultural aspect, I think that's number one overall. You can't really simulate it. You can, but you can't really simulate culture and atmosphere when it comes to basketball and athletics. You just have to be there. Like you have to be in a city, in a school, in a state or a country that just breeds these things. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's better when it happens by osmosis. Like when you just can naturally absorb it instead of it being forced upon you. Like I find when I'm training with some of my students and I'm trying to pound it into them, like you got to go harder, you got to play tougher. And then I rewind back to those times when I had a coach doing the same thing to me. You're weak. You're not going hard enough. I had a coach used to always talk about my motor. You got to turn up your motor. You got to turn up your motor. And, in your mind, and especially when you're 14, 15, even when you get 18, 19, you're not fully developed. So you don't know everything. And especially you don't know what you don't know. So I didn't know that I had another level to my game. But I could have known that if I was in a better atmosphere. You know what I mean? Because then you can see that step above. This is where I need to be, and this is where I need to be. But I did have that, but it could have been better. It could have been even better when it comes to where I could have gone. So we talk about the atmosphere, but you also have to have that passion. You have to have that competitive spirit. And that might be genetics or it might be an environmental thing. So as we talked about in the States, it's so competitive, from middle school, especially by the time you get in high school, you're getting bullied for not being on the varsity squad. I remember, if you're not, you a junior? You a junior? You not playing varsity?
You're on JV?
You still playing JV? Man, me and my best friend, like all of my best friends. So I got about 3 guys in the U.S. that I call my brothers. Yeah. And we crack jokes on each other to this day about stats. And if you were on JV as a junior or a sophomore, we're 34. We're gonna be doing this until we're 40.
Sure.
So just imagine how it was, and luckily now I can handle it. I mean, I could always handle it. I've always had tough skin, but imagine when you're 14, 15 years old and you're in high school and you're trying to impress some girls and you're trying to be the man and you got your boy in your ear like, you not starting tonight? You know what I mean? So that kind of pressure, I mean, it can be healthy. It can be healthy to drive you to be more competitive. but you also got your parents. So my parents expected me to not only do well academically, they expected me to excel athletically as well. Because our family, my mom played basketball.
Okay.
My dad played basketball and football. My grandparents played basketball and all types of sports. My uncle, you know what I mean? So I can look on the wall and see this representation, whereas here in Hong Kong, they probably don't see that as much.
For sure.
I can't imagine a young Hong Kong boy looking on the walls and seeing his father's photos of being an NCAA athlete or something like that, which means a lot, to be able to see it, because that's that whole visualization aspect of it. You have to be able to imagine it, to manifest it, for it to become reality. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing here in Hong Kong.
I think another thing, like going off what you said, because it's totally right, is social proof, right? Like proof that people can make it, right?
Right.
So if you're going to take a place like Brooklyn, Coney Island compared to Hong Kong, and people go into D1 yearly, like hundreds of them go into D1 because they're that good, right? And it's just expected that this is definitely doable. Whereas, Yanni was the first one to go to the NCAA, and she's out of how many years? Like this is like basketball has been around for a while, right? But to have those opportunities and to have that level, that expectation that it's doable, right? And so you went back and one of the things, let's go back, you talked about athletically, right? But I think obviously, like a lot of, when you go to America, the game is so athletic.
Right.
But I feel like that's definitely a reason. But if you're really passionate about the game, you can make up for athleticism with intelligence.
True.
But obviously, it helps to be athletic. Obviously, like it's a big part, and some people just thrive off their athleticism, right? But I don't buy that, right? Like for me, I have a chip on my shoulder because I was an Asian guy that went to America to play basketball, and we don't get a whole lot of respect, as you know, which is fine, which is totally fine. I believe you have to earn that. Everybody should have to earn that. But to be able to play in any borough in New York and be able to hang with the best players, they're the toughest players, it's just an excuse to me. Like you've got to put the time in. You got to put the time not only on the court, but time into studying your craft, studying the game, studying yourself mentally, physically, and like intellectually, and being able to, make up for your deficiencies in that way. I think like going back to that, when I asked you, what's one of the biggest things off air, we were talking about what's one of the biggest things for youth that you feel like is lacking? For me, Brian was talking about experience. And that's obviously a big thing. And I'm going to add one more point onto that, is decision making. In order to make those, and skill is one part of it, Biost, but a decision precedes the skill in terms of like how it's executed. Like I must first, if I'm going to catch the ball, before I do whatever I do, I need to make a decision. How far is this guy away from me? How is the formation being played? Like I need to be able to make a decision. And in order for that to happen, you need to have enough game experience.
Right.
And you also need to have the right mentorship to like, hey, let's look back on whether that was the best decision there.
Right.
So I think like you're absolutely right.
Now, like you probably just taking words out of my mouth.
Okay.
So, because sometimes minds think alike. Now, if we're talking about globally, I was going to say this, what you're talking about now, when it comes to mentorship and decision making, but I was going to lean more towards what you're doing now as far as strength and conditioning, wisdom, and this ties into decision making, just being able to make sound decisions as far as how am I training, why am I training, down from the foundational point, even to like, what am I eating, these types of decisions, the decisions that you're making. But from a global standpoint, we're talking 14, 15-year-old kids, right? They need to learn the basics, the very basics of each and every step of what they're trying to do, and have an understanding of direction. So, you're talking about decisions, why am I going to lift? Why do I need to lift? What is it? What are the benefits? They basically need to be mentored or educated properly, which is, I think, the biggest issue across the board, is that education
Yes.
is not good enough across the board generally. So even the best athletes in the world, in the U.S., don't get the proper education.
100%.
You know what I
100%.
mean? So what you're doing right now is it's like flip flop. So, and I know there are very underprivileged students here in Hong Kong,
Sure.
and people, we see them all the time.
All the time.
But it's more likely that it's the other situation, that the kids here in Hong Kong have financial help, whereas most kids who are good and talented in the U.S., they don't have that financial help, but they don't have the education.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found is the most talented kids can't afford it. I mean, it's true here in Hong Kong, I'm sure. But they can't get that. They got the athleticism. So what I'm trying to say is they have that athleticism, but they don't have the education. They don't have the mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
These types of aspects.
Yeah.
And so they can't make the proper decisions. You see it all the time. You get these 30 for 30 on ESPNs of guys. We know some guys. You get these 30 for 30 ESPN stories about guys who are, making the wrong decision when it comes to money.
Yep.
Gambling, women, school choices, all the way from down here to the top. And I think that's a great point that you hit on when it comes to decision making.
Imagine that William Lowe and Bryant Austin for a day was able to kind of overhaul the Hong Kong basketball system. And it's interesting because we both have basketball business in Hong Kong. So this is perfect to be able, because I think together we have a good idea of what it looks like.
Right.
What's one thing that you would either change or completely take out? And I apologize to BLS because he didn't know this question was coming, but because we're onto this topic now, right? So because it's something I think we're both passionate about.
Right.
So if you could think about one of the things that might have a little bit of change, or even if it comes from a parental perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Like, hey, maybe sports is something that is valuable. Sports is not just for fun. Sports can literally give you opportunities academically if you play it at a high level. Like, do you have any suggestions in terms of that?
Man, there are a million things that need to be changed here in Hong Kong. It starts with leadership, of course. It starts with leadership. I'm not going to criticize the government or anything like that, but it starts at the top.
Yep.
And then it trickles down.
Sure.
Down from the parents, of course. The parents have a say-so in how the basketball community works. Yep. They just don't know it. And as I said, you don't know what you don't know. So you can't really, complain about the parents not understanding that students can't just train once or twice a week. It's like you want to go to the NBA and you practicing twice a week, whereas I got to get up and work out 3 times a week just to play in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. It's like, come on, like you got to, but they don't know, which is where guys like us step in and we can fill in those gaps of giving, the proper education to the parents here in Hong Kong. The biggest problem that we will have is the leadership above us, which is like organizational leadership when it comes to HKBA, when it comes to governmental stuff that we have no control over, how leagues are run. It's tough. It's tough to, inspire at that level when people have been doing something
for so long, right?
Incorrect for so long. It's almost like you got to either like wait for these guys to, wash out of the system, or you have to, cause some type of distraction or some type of make a big splash somehow, and it might seem as though you are trying to disturb what's going on. Either way, I think that's the thing, is just the leadership it needs to improve and be educated, and it's going to take some time, man. It's as you see, I've been here 8 years. We've made some progress for sure, but it's gradual. I think it could go a lot faster, and I've got many ways, but I don't want to
for sure
step on some toes.
No, for sure. Do you have any parents who have high expectations for their kids when it comes to basketball? I'm just curious because, like, again, we we are in the same kind of circle. So like, what do you, for the most part, what do you say? Is it for fun, or do you have some parents who take it really seriously? And if they do take it really seriously, do you feel like they know what actually has to go into it in order to get close to that level?
I really respect all of the parents that I deal with, because, they're giving their kids the best opportunity that they could have.
Right.
To be able to, chase your dreams is rare, in the world. You just think about how many people in the world, are in poverty, just to start there. But to be able to say, my kid wants to play professional basketball or basketball at a high level or whatever they want, whatever the goal is. Hey, I'm going to hire a professional coach, like that's rare in the world. So, respect to the parents for being able to do that. But yes, I have I got some parents who are like, my kid is NBA talent. You can see it in their eyes, and it's like, that's great, because, you want your parents to be able to be thinking that, because you never know. And of course we can see a kid if he's got it or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? And of course there's a slight chance that we could be wrong.
No, for sure.
But I've seen enough kids in my lifetime to be able, that one dribble, you might want to go ahead with the badminton, what else does he do? That type of thing. But, time will tell, some kids, love the game, and you could just tell, man, this kid's going to be special.
On the boys' end, and this is globally from your experience in the States and in Hong Kong,
right.
Have you ever seen a kid, like say you get a 15-year-old, you start working with him at 15, and by the time he's 18, it's a totally different person. Like, meaning like he's gone from someone being able to be like bad. Can you go from being bad to great? Because I think you can go from good to great. You can go from.
I think so.
Tell me about
an
experience. Like, was it in the States? Was it in Hong Kong? Like,
of course.
Who is someone that?
I mean, myself.
Okay,
great. I can start with myself.
Perfect.
I mean, I wouldn't say I was terrible. I mean,
I don't think you were terrible.
But there was a point where I wasn't what I am now.
Okay.
I know what I've went through. And that's what I have this conversation with some of my students as well, is that people only can see you where you are now, especially the people who don't know you, which is most people. The most people you interact with now in today's social media era, most people don't really know you. So you only have a handful of people who saw you grow, and they can say, man, you really changed, and I'm one person who's drastically changed. And I remember the point where I changed, I know the points.
How old were you?
So I didn't become a pro, like mentality wise.
So that's a big part, obviously.
What do you mean?
I mean, that's like, you're talking about the mentality.
Mentality, yes.
How old were you at the time?
Like 21. 21.
So that's late.
Exactly. So I always saw myself as a late bloomer anyway.
Okay.
Because I kind of started organizational sports a little bit later.
Okay.
So, and then confidence-wise, which is a huge aspect of it as well, was not until I would say 19, 20 as well.
Wow.
So I didn't really believe. I had the dream, I had the passion, I had the fire, but I didn't really believe in my soul that I was that good until I hit 20, 21. Until I got in that atmosphere and I got in that culture of high level sports. So until I got around these Division I guys, these guys that are supposedly NBA players, and I was beating those guys, and I'm like, I'm beating this guy one-on-one. That's me. I can do this. And it just changed.
Okay, I want to back up slightly, because there's like the first thing you talked about wasn't how much time you spent with the ball. The first thing you talked about was the mentality, which is great. So, but I don't believe that you being not very good, like you're going to go through a lot of emotional tough times when you're going to play against these guys and they're giving you a whooping, right? And I mean, it takes some self-reflection. It takes that's real mental toughness, because it could be shame, it could be anger, it could be sadness. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of that is like, how do you deal with those things? Talk about that a little bit, because I think that's not touched upon very much.
You said dealing with, say that again.
So, okay, if I'm going to play you one-on-one, and I'm going to like spend the next 2 years, Okay, this might be a good project. And I'm going to play Bios 1-on-1. And at some point, I'm going to beat him. Like, it could be we're going to play a game to 10, and I'm going to beat him 10-5 or whatever. So I'm putting all my eggs in that basket. But the first 200 times we play, I might lose 10-1. Oh, that's a pretty good game for me already. But, like, I might not feel great about myself emotionally. And it's through those negative emotions that I could quit. Do you understand where I'm trying to go now?
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell me that you just stepped on the court and you were able to play with these guys, because that's not proving the point, right?
Of course not.
So how did you go about dealing with trial and error emotionally?
Man, I could, the easy way out would just be that I'm blessed with my personality.
It's just natural, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
I spent a lot of time, watching my father, how he reacts to certain situations, and he's pretty even keel. Of course, I get angry if you see me in the mornings, and I'm working out. Of course, I go through my times, man. We're all human. I go through my periods where I want to quit. I've gone through seasons where I'm like, man, coach ain't playing me enough, or if he makes us run one more time, I'm quitting, or, I wake up in the morning, my hips don't move how they supposed to. I don't want to do this, But as I said, most of my personality comes from my father.
Okay.
Like when it comes to this stuff is just, sticking it out. In that culture of that, our household, we had this whole, if you start something, you better finish it.
Nice.
My mom was, you go to practice, you better, if something happens at school, like where the coach kicks you out of practice, you better walk home. These type of little, life lessons that my parents taught me of being resilient and, finishing what you start. I remember one year I started playing volleyball. So the volleyball coach was begging me all through high school, please play on the volleyball team. Cause I went to a Division I high school, and our volleyball team was like one of the best in the state.
Okay.
And they just wanted me to play because I was pretty athletic. Yeah. And I'm like, nah, man, because, where I grew up, men didn't really play volleyball. It was
you wouldn't get into the
sport.
short shorts. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Oh. So I was like, I'm not wearing those shorts. But then, I started to mature and realize, like,
not all about those
it's
shorts,
not
right?
about the shorts,
Right.
And then and I saw their workouts and realized that they were going to make me better. And I decided to play. But halfway through the season, that volleyball season ran into our AAU basketball season. So it was like,
what season is it? Is it the spring?
I think
It's spring.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, because we didn't have volleyball in the school. Anyway, yeah.
So it was running into a basketball, like AAU stuff or whatever we were doing with some basketball stuff, and I'm like, I can't. I had to choose basketball or choose volleyball. But I remember my parents saying, like, you already decided. So I would have to stick through that. So what I would say, I think a lot of it comes from that, and then just my competitive side. I'm so competitive for some reason. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it's from watching my parents or my older sister, but I have this chip inside of me that when someone says I can't do something, I just get fired up, And I remember playing video games when I was younger. I'd be playing Mario, and my mom like, go to bed, and I'm turn the TV off, but don't turn the game off. Mom walked down, and I got to stay up and beat the game until I'm satisfied.
It's interesting. For me, I'm the same way, but only with certain things.
Right.
Like things that matter to me. Like if you beat me in Mario Kart, like I really don't care. But like if you were to be on the opposing basketball team and you had out coached me, like I'm still gonna be a good sport and shake it, obviously, and show good sportsmanship. Right. But you better believe I'm going home immediately to watch film and see where I messed up. Like that I can't. Do you know what I mean? But like, if we're gonna have a race, like a swimming race, I don't really care about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and when it comes to basketball, when we talked about getting to that level, it's like I put so much time into it.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like I wasted it. So when I got to a certain level, where I was playing these guys, these higher level guys, some of these guys were already in the NBA that I was playing. And it's like, this guy had to go through the same thing. Nobody was just destroyed. I don't care if it's Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan ran into some dogs too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure LeBron has
yeah.
ran into some
That would
dogs
probably be
too.
closer. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Where they were like, man, this guy's tough, you know, or had to question themselves
Sure.
and then go back and reinvent themselves.
Yep.
It's like, if this guy had to do it, I had to do it. And that's where I said that atmosphere plays into it, because luckily I wasn't the best ever, you know, when I was younger, because I would have settled for just that. You know what I mean? I would have just been like, okay, I'm the man, you know, and then I would have ran into a brick wall, and then maybe my career would be over. And then that rejection would hurt even a lot more. Whereas I'd been facing that since I was younger, because I started school early. My older sister's 2 years older than me and was better than me until I was 12. Most of my friends were older than me and better than me until after high school. So I was always climbing or punching up, you know, trying to, you know, reach up and strive for, you know, something that was already greater than myself, instead of me, you know, being that focal point. You know what I mean?
You were talking about athleticism and being the best at a young age. I'm sure you've seen it, but have you seen a kid who, and we were also talking about mentorship and decisions.
Right.
Have you seen a kid be extremely athletic in high school? And because he was so athletic in high school, he just depended on his athleticism, and it wasn't able to take him as far in the long run. So like, he went into college, he went to maybe a Power 5 college, and then all of a sudden he realized that everyone was just as athletic, except he wasn't able to handle the ball as well. He was able to bully everybody on the block, but now like there's seniors who are 4 years older than him. Do you have any memories of guys who are like that?
That happens every season.
Yeah.
Every season, at every level, you get guys who are quicker, faster, stronger, which carries you through, you know, adolescence, like middle school, you know, even, you know, early years of high school. It can possibly, if you're taller, bigger, stronger, faster, and then you lean on those gifts a little too heavily, and then all of a sudden, like you said, now you run into guys just as good, but then you realize the next level is that skill, you know, and then we can go up even higher when it comes to, you know, mentality and experience and all this type of stuff. But that next skill level, if you don't have that, you're definitely going to run into that, you know, as a player. I've seen that many times. I've run into that as a player myself, you know, being athletic and thinking, you know, man, like, I can jump a little bit. Then you get in the gym with somebody who can really jump, and you're like, bruh, like, man, it makes you feel like, man, I can't jump at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, the athleticism does help, you know, and you definitely have to work on that. That's a part of it. But yeah, you can run into a sticky situation if you don't develop the rest of your game, you know, and that happens by far every season. And it's a good thing, because everybody can't make it. You know, if everybody, you know, if everybody makes it to the top, then, you know.
Who's someone you played in high school and you were just like,
my best friend, he's garbage. No, I'm sorry. Raphael, you are garbage. No, I'm joking.
Who's someone who you played in high school and sticks out to you because he was so good at such a young age?
My best friend.
Oh, he's not garbage. Yeah.
No. He was pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of the guys that I play with. So my best friend Raphael, he was one of the better players when I was young. He was bigger and faster than everybody else. Like, developed, you know, and he fell into the category of what we just spoke about, you know, guys who didn't get the proper development because our coaches weren't doing that. And I tell my students now, you better have some accountability for yourself of how you're training, and especially now in the information age where you can get on YouTube and find anything. Right. Because my coach, after practice, my coach was going home to his wife.
For sure.
Like, he wasn't staying to show me no between the legs, behind the back drills, none of that. Yep. And back then, we really didn't have YouTube. You know, it was like, you better watch it on. You better watch the game and remember it, or if you had, what was it, the TV which you can rewind, TiVo or whatever that. Well, I didn't have.
I would get like a couple instructional DVDs.
Right. DVDs, VHS tapes. That's what we had back in the day. So, he was one of the players. One of my other best friends, Travis, he had a twin who was Tristan. They were also very, very talented, you know, at that age.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. So we're going to talk about a very talented individual. And And usually when I go back to the States and tell people that this actually happened in my life, they're probably thinking that I'm a liar. Well, they definitely think that I'm a liar. And so Brian and I, a while back, we used to be roommates. And that's why I know BL so well. And, I had the pleasure of Brian calling me one day, and he was like, "Hey, do you have any interest in training Lamar Odom?" And I was like, "You mean the guy who played with Kobe and has 3 rings?" Two rings.
Yeah.
I was like, "Am I going to be flying over to LA or something like that?" He's like, "No, he's coming to Hong Kong." And I was like, "Sure." And what Brian didn't tell me at the time is that Lamar, all 6'10" of him, was going to be staying in our apartment. And why don't you talk about how did that come to fruition? Like, how in the world did I end up training Lamar? And I would get home, had my dinner with me because I was so busy during the day, and there's Lamar sitting on our couch playing Xbox. How did that happen, Biost?
Man, it feels like yesterday.
It does. I remember
right?
this
How,
very
like
clearly.
4 years ago. So I had a mutual business friend in Shenzhen,
Okay.
Richard, and through another friend, Zul. And we had a good relationship, and we were trying to build some things through sports. I was always trying to grow in mainland China and do some things and try to, find my way over there as well. And my name came up because Lamar had just gotten back to wanting to play again. So he went through this period where he was, down on his luck and, had 7 strokes or something like that after being in a coma. And he hadn't played basketball since he was with the Dallas Mavericks, which would have been
Was that after the Lakers?
after the
He went to
Lakers.
the. Oh, I did.
He went to the
Okay.
Dallas Mavericks for like a year stint or something like that. And then, he called it quits. He was going through a tough time. And he wanted to get back and wanted to play in the CBA. So that's where he wanted to make his first stop, is playing the CBA. He wanted to, end his basketball career as it should. Lamar is a legend, a living legend. Not only in New York, he was one of the best one of the best high school players of all time,
Yes.
in my opinion. At
Yes.
6'10", point guard, like, come on, man.
I always say he's a Ben Simmons that can shoot. He's not as athletic, right? He's not as athletic, but he's a Ben Simmons that can shoot. Like his handles.
I would say better than that.
He would rock up to. Do you know what EBC is? Like street ball in New York.
Right.
Like at Rucker.
Right.
And he would go and he would ball with these guys, and it's like purely like he could go between his legs 4 times, throw it behind the guy,
Right.
and it was ridiculous.
Right. People don't.
He's 6'10".
When you see, this is the crazy thing about. I don't want to get off track, but the crazy thing when it comes to levels.
Yeah.
Levels of basketball are like drastic. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And people don't understand until you see it in your face. So you see a guy like Kobe, how much of a difference is from Kobe and Lamar. But Lamar is a generational athlete as well.
There's no
You know what I mean? Like, just think about that. And then you think about someone like LeBron.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So when I watch prime Lamar, I see LeBron, not as, LeBron's like athleticism and his transcendence, but when it comes to being that big and that skilled and with that IQ, on the court, Lamar would be making $100 million today. He'd be on a max contract in today's basketball.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Especially if he was focused.
Right.
If we got to focus Lamar, then we got a 4 or 5 time champion, NBA player. So, but going back, so Lamar wanted to come to Asia, and he wanted to build his brand in Asia and reinvent himself, and get rid of all the negativity that was surrounding his name. And my name was one of the first to come up and to give him an opportunity to, train and, just be around a guy who knows the area of, of Asia and to work with him. So of course I was like, I got a call, and I think Zul and Richard called me, and they're like, Lamar wants to come over and he wants to meet you. We talked. He's heard about you, and he wants to meet you. So I went over, and we sat down, and I got an idea of what he wanted to do. And I was all on board from then. And then from there, I think it kind of stalled for a week because Lamar wasn't sure about making the trip over, but then he was all in from there. I gave him a plan of how we were going to do it, and one of the first things on the plan, because when I have a plan, a project, I want to do it right. You know what I mean? Especially a big project like that. Lamar is a big project. You probably won't get a bigger project than working with Lamar Odom. Because he's such a big name, he's a big talent, and then to complete the job is so challenging. So you need a team. You definitely need a team of people. So I had Richard and I had Zul to do all the outside work for me. And then I'm like, Lamar, once I saw him first, the first time Lamar touched the basketball after 8 years, it was like watching Bambi, like a baby deer, walk for the first time. And it was amazing to see. What amazed me the most was that even after not playing for 8 years, having 7 strokes and going through all this tough time, he was still super talented. That's what amazed me. That's what was like, man, he lost a lot, but just to imagine to have 7 strokes, to be in a coma, and then to still have any of that left over. So when we first, of course, he was rusty. He was terribly rusty. But when we started to get some of the rust off, I'm like, he's going to have to go through a foundational program, to really get him to where he needs to be. And I'm like, man, I know Will, I was roommates with Will, and I'm like, Will does a lot of great work when it comes to foundation, of longevity and, athleticism in general, strength and conditioning and all this stuff that Lamar really needed. And I wanted to just focus on the basketball side of things, make sure, his skill work was, right. So, I hit up Will and was like, Will, you got a program for Lamar, and, luckily, Will came through with that.
It's great. What do you think of Lamar's court? When you say Lamar at his prime, was it with the Clippers, was it the Lakers?
Lakers, of course.
Lakers, right?
Yeah.
He was like almost the X factor of that team, right?
Definitely. So he made the biggest sacrifice, I think, out of all of those guys of coming off the bench that those 2 seasons. So at first he was starting with Kobe, and they were going through some tragically tough times, before, I think that was before Powell got there. Yeah. And then Phil made a decision to ask Lamar to come off the bench as this X factor type of player, which he's really a starter.
Sure.
But to come off the bench, it's like, now I'm going against your second unit. I'm a starter going against your second unit, which is tough. It's tough to guard that. So I think he's definitely that key. And then what were you saying about his passing?
I was going to say, what do you think is his best quality on the court?
I think his best quality is his IQ of the game. I think some players just don't get that credit because you can't. It's just like intangible. You can't really measure IQ. Mm. You know what I mean? You can't measure it in, I guess you can say your assist to turnover ratio. But it's
subjective, right? The right decision could be one thing for you, one thing for me.
Right. So Lamar just, most of the times he makes the right play. Yep. He knows what he can and can't do. He's not Manu Ginobili. When it comes to certain things, he's not Kobe Bryant but he's an amalgamation of all of these players. He's not Curry, so he's not going to stand out there and shoot a bunch of threes where we see some players today will force up 100 threes just to prove that I can hit it. He'll get in that high post and hit that high low. You've seen him do 1,000 times to Pau Gasol, or drop a no-look pass, which takes a high IQ. You see Jokic doing a lot of this stuff now, and we're like, wow. But I'm like, Lamar used to do that same thing.
Yeah.
But he'd come down and dunk on you, at the same time. To be 6'10" and bringing the ball down, he was one of the first ones to be doing that. You get your Tracy McGrady's, Rashard Lewis, but Rashard wasn't really handling the ball like that. Penny Hardaway, about 6'8", 6'9" ish. You can't really, it's like 10 or 10 of these guys who can do what Lamar did,
Right.
and he could really, if you had him to. I wish we would have seen Lamar with the Phil Jackson his whole career. You know what I mean? Instead of, he started with the Clippers in that situation with a bunch of young guys.
Yep.
And it's all about basketball, and professional sports is all about where you get drafted to. So like if he had gotten drafted to a championship team like San Antonio Spurs and been under Popovich his whole career, under some great veteran players, who knows where his career would have been. But yeah.
And this guy, to be honest with you, legit 6'10". Like some people say they're 6'10", they're 6'7", right?
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah.
The guy, be honest, what, you're 6'6"?
6'6".
6'6".
Yeah, towering over me.
Towering.
Right.
And just the levers, like how long this guy, it was.
Yeah.
Like we have the Versa climber, and he would be doing the verse, and he would be reaching the top like this,
Right.
And it's just so long, and like being able to see someone that height and be like, wow, I've watched you on TV, and you at one point of your life could move like that and could shoot like that and pass like that. You worked with him on his skill part.
Right.
What did you learn from him?
What did I learn? I mean, I learned so much. Honestly, just by watching. Because I would have to go back and watch old videos of Lamar, because I wanted him to get as close. I didn't want to reinvent him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes we get in this habit of just copy and paste, or you want someone to be like you know what I mean? So I had to go back and really study who Lamar Odom was.
That's great.
So I was, watching a lot of his videos, and a lot of it was just feel and touch, you know what I mean? Like, giving him the opportunity to get out there and fall in love with the game again, because I wasn't going to teach Lamar Odom anything new about basketball. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to. We did work on some new moves and stuff, but I wasn't going to, open his eyes. He had been learning from Phil Jackson. You know what I mean? So what I was going to give him is the opportunity to just throw it out there again. You know what I mean? Like to reinvent himself, like to get out there and play. Like I wanted him to, it's hard to put it. Like I wanted him to, my whole goal was for him to basically build up his confidence again, because that's what he was lacking. You know what I mean? His confidence was just shot after not playing for 8 years and, going through all these mental things with the strokes and stuff. So what I learned from him is, number one, the resiliency of, just imagine not playing, for that long, what the body has to do. He was pulling hamstrings. We were in Amsterdam. We were in Rotterdam. We spent some time in Rotterdam and Amsterdam, but not for those reasons. so we're in Rotterdam, and we're working out in Rotterdam, and he pulls a muscle, of course.
What was he doing? This
was
was
just
before
sprinting.
He was back to Hong Kong.
Right.
I remember this.
Right,
yes.
right. So we just light jogging,
Oh my God.
and he pops his hamstring, and I'm just like, man, like that's bound to happen. You sitting around for that long, not treating your body right, not eating right. And Lamar had put on like 100 pounds at one point.
Oh yeah. Was he
He
on some
was
weight loss
overweight,
thing?
like crazy.
Celebrity weight? No, he wasn't, right?
I think he
I think he might have been,
yeah. He had put on so much weight. So that's like so much stress on your body. And for him to go through all this work that we was putting, and I was putting him through some work, and you were putting him through work as well. To go through that, I know how my body feels now. You see me when I'm working out with you, I'm like, bruh. Like, so just imagine, your body being in such a crisis, to be able to respond to that and be able to push through to that. I learned that from him. Me and Lamar used to stay up all night talking basketball. We used to talk about Kobe's game, some of the best players in the game. We used to watch videos together. Lamar is like a basketball genius. Like
really?
How they say LeBron is, that's Lamar Odom. Lamar can recall, like Lamar won't remember where Lamar will forget where he left his phone 2 minutes ago. But he will remember a play.
I remember
from
this.
2006 in
Who
X
it was
game,
against,
who
where
it
he
was.
was. Yep.
Yeah, he will remember stuff like that, and I'm like, wow, like that's the genius that they say LeBron has, and
Okay.
that's what Lamar has. He would teach me about just styles of play and stuff like that I had no privy to before, and just as an overall athlete, he taught me a lot of things of how to train certain athletes, from training high level athletes as himself to training guys who are injured, to training guys who are older, so there's a lot of different, aspects when it came to Lamar that I learned like a lot from.
I'm going to share with you what I learned from Lamar, because obviously I was on the physical side,
Right.
which he doesn't have any experience. I mean, not experience. He doesn't have any expertise in that, right? Because he's a basketball player. The thing that I learned from Lamar was he had a very big heart.
Right.
And Lamar, like, this is unbelievable for a superstar to do this. And I'm sure they're out there, but like, this is the first time I've seen this. He would treat everyone the same, meaning, and it was good, meaning he would just go up to anybody. Is the woman like sweeping the floor somewhere? Like our clients, he would treat everybody the same with positive energy. And he was, what I felt like he was genuinely interested in everyone.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Course,
and so like, I don't know if Bios remembers this, but we just finished training Lamar, and there was a kids class after that.
Mm-hmm.
And Hong Kong is not exactly the most American place. So, but people would recognize him, but kids, like British kids may not recognize, they don't know who he is. But he would go and play dodgeball with the kids. Do you remember this?
Right.
Like we played dodgeball. He would just
yeah.
go and play with anybody. He would talk
Right.
to kids. He would, hey, what's your name? Where do you go to school?
Yeah.
Like, what's your favorite sport? Like, that's one of the things that I learned from this guy is a 2-3-time NBA champion.
Right.
And here he is talking to some kid who he has no idea about,
Right.
or this kid who has no idea who he is. And he's treating like at that time, he's the most important person in the room.
Right. He's like
Unbelievable.
super humble.
Super humble.
And yeah, I learned, a lot when it comes to that as well. Because when I first met him, he treated me like we were brothers from the first day. Like, he understood me like from the first day. Like, and
he has no filter.
Exactly. No,
he's going to tell you exactly.
Exactly. So not only is he humble, he's straightforward. Straight shooter. If he likes you, he likes you. If he doesn't, he'll tell you. That's just how he is. I remember, I think a week later, my mom flew out to Hong Kong, and he's like, bring your mom over. So I went from just meeting Lamar, we're talking business about how we're going to train him. The next week, I think we're shooting a music video with Lamar and my mom in China. So like, this is just Lamar.
Here's a funny story, and my wife will laugh at this. One of the reasons that when I met my wife, she was obviously the best woman I ever met, but our marriage was significantly expedited because after I met my soon-to-be wife, Lamar was living with us at the time.
Right.
And so I'd been out and realized that Lamar had been sleeping in my bed, which is fine. It's fine. It's better than sleeping on the couch. But then I realized that he'd been sleeping on my bed regularly, which is all good. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay at my fiance's house, and Lamar can have my bed. And so we got married a lot sooner than he thought because of Lamar. And so, I mean.
Yeah, that was a good, 3-4 months? Was it? Or longer?
Like longer than that.
Yeah, it might have been longer than that.
Yeah. Remember that time that we took him to an island to eat dinner?
Right. What island was that?
That was Po Toi Island. And you have to take a boat there.
Right.
Like there's literally only one restaurant on this island. And we got off the boat. Lamar was getting chewed up by mosquitoes.
Oh yeah.
And instantly he takes his shirt off. He's like, God damn it, like I can't. And then we have dinner. And when I tell people I've had Lamar Odom slept in my house and we had dinner on this weird, like
nobody's gonna believe
nobody thinks
that story.
I'm telling the truth. But
because I will forget, because me and Lamar developed such a good relationship, and it feels like we're brothers. You know
absolutely.
what I mean? I would forget how big of a star he is.
You would.
Like he's a global icon, like a global star.
Lamar Odom.
Right. and you don't really see it until you walking around with him, and everybody's like, that's, you hear him whisper, that's Lamar Odom, that's Lamar Odom. They want to take photos with him and stuff. And I'm like, this is what it feels like to be, famous. This is real fame. You know what I mean? And it can, and when you talk about humility, you know what I mean? It boosts it up even that much more because of how difficult it has to be to go everywhere.
And everybody's like,
and everybody knows who you are. There's no privacy. Everybody knows your business, the negative stuff. And to be able to still treat everyone, equally says a lot. You know what
absolutely.
I mean? Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears here, and I want to talk about your future.
Right.
And now this is a relatively deep question. Like, what's the impact? Like, you're obviously heavily involved in basketball, but I feel like basketball is a vehicle to do many different things, right? It's obviously we're both passionate about the game.
Right.
But what's in the future for BIOS? What's the impact that you want to leave on society and the world?
I think about that all the time. Yep. And of course, I have an idea.
Yep.
But to be honest, I don't think it's fair for me to decide what impact I leave on the world. You know what I mean? So I have a passion, and this is fun for me. Like, what I do now is fun for me. I'm blessed to be able to do what I love to do, which is just happens to be helping people. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, yes.
So through basketball, I've learned that I can help people have a better life. They can make decisions, have more decisions, more freedom in where they go, who they interact with, because your circle is very important. And so ultimately, it's almost like I'm helping people.
Absolutely.
So I'm just happy to do what I'm doing now. And of course, I have some goals of where I see myself and where I see my life 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But I set out to have this goal of impacting youth because I wanted to give what I did not have.
100%.
You know what I mean? So I remember so when I train someone, I train them based on a lot of times what did I not get at that age that would have took me further in life, not just on the court, but just as so when a lot of times I'll speak to one of my students about the game, but then I'll hit them with a little life lesson as well. They might tie into, why you gotta come to practice early or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and these life lessons have afforded me the life that I have now. I have brothers and sisters. One of my brothers, he's doing okay now, but he's not where I am. I have an older sister. She's doing okay, but she's not where I am. They had goals as well. And I'm the lucky one out of us three to be living my dreams. So I know how blessed I am, and I want to just give that back to a lot of students who may feel as though they don't have something to propel them forward. So I just want to focus on that, and if that ends up me impacting the world in some way, then so be it. It's not for me. I don't think that's up, for me to decide. I'd like to do bigger things, things that make me happy. That give me passion, which is like helping kids get into schools, universities in the U.S. I think that gives me joy to be able to, say I helped this kid get an education. I helped this kid become a professional. And then later down the line, we're 40, 50 years old, and we can have kids reaching back to us with families.
Absolutely.
Saying, hey, I appreciate what you did for me. I'm going to send my son to you, I'm going to send my daughter to you as well. And it just becomes this, this big,
like a spiraling effect.
It's a big spiraling effect, and I may never know, the true impact of, my time here, on earth in general, because it's not for me to know. It's not always for me to know who I've inspired. There's a bunch of kids that are thinking, man, Will, I love Will. I love what Will does. I listen to Will's podcast. People you don't even know have listened to your podcast. People that I know, people who have said things about you, great things about you that you don't even know.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? So there's so many people that you're going to impact, and those people are just as important, and I just want to keep doing what I love to do, which is what I'm doing now. I may change gears at some point. I may say, I don't want to coach basketball anymore. I'm just going each day. I'm waking up. I'm happy. As long as I'm happy and I'm doing what I love to do, I'm gonna keep doing it. If I wake up tomorrow and say, "Hey, man, I wanna learn the guitar," I'm gonna do that. But I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability, and then eventually I'm gonna give back. That's just that's just the passion that I get from things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you want me to keep
Yes,
going?
sir.
I can go all day.
Hey.
How do you balance? Did you have a question? Because I don't want to.
Let me get a question. Let me get a question there.
Yeah.
This guy's taking all the questions, man. I knew it was going to turn into the Will Show.
No.
I knew it.
What's the ratio of talking?
Look at this guy. Now look, this is going to segue into a great question that I have for you. You've got, when I first met you, and still to this day, like, you've got some of the best energy of all people that I've ever met. So you've got this great, upbeat personality to you, especially when you're working. Like, and this is why I choose, when I work out, if I want to work out with somebody, I'll go to you. I'll work with you. Or if I want to talk about sports or basketball, I'll go to you, because you got a passion for the game and it's contagious. You know what I mean? Where did you get that from? Like, did you learn that from your parents? Where does this side of you come from?
So I think that, well, my parents, my dad, they're both, okay, to a certain extent, what I do right now is a combination of both. My dad is a university professor,
Right.
so he's in education. And my mom worked for a Rockefeller Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization called the Asian Cultural Council. And what they do is they take talented artists and give them the opportunity to go to schools like Juilliard and in America to hone their craft. Basically kind of what I do. So I'm a coach, and my passion is to help kids to use me to hone their craft, but then to use basketball as a vehicle to further the education and better their lives. There's a quote by a guy by the name of John Kessel, who's part of USA Volleyball. And the quote is something like this. The quote is, "We are all trying to be," people like you and me, Brian, the person that we never had when we were younger. We are trying to be the person that we didn't have
Right.
when we were younger. Does that make sense? Like, I grew up in Hong Kong. I didn't have a mentor to show me the way of how to better my life using basketball. So I kind of had to figure it out myself. I didn't have a mentor who would stay up all night like me, watching film, reading scientific research papers to figure out how, like, learning is done, and skill acquisition and motor learning and strength and all this kind of stuff. I didn't have that person. So I want to be everything to these kids, kind of going off what you said,
Right.
that I didn't have. And
Right.
but that just doesn't have to be with kids. That can be with professional athletes. Like, I want to be everything that they don't have so that they can be the best versions of themselves. Because that, to me, that means their success means more to me than any amount of money.
Right.
Unfortunately, I own a business, so that might not be
True,
the
true,
best
yeah.
thing in the long run. But it doesn't matter to me. Like, there's no better feeling to see my athletes succeed, whether young or professional. And so that energy that, okay, what we're doing each day actually matters. We're laying one brick, then we're laying another brick, and then we're laying another brick. And you're a coach as well. Like, the energy that you bring to that session, I'm literally giving you my energy.
Right.
I'm literally giving. If I showed up and I was talking with this, Brian, we're going to do this single leg squat. Like, I'm not giving you energy. You're not going to be motivated to do
Right.
that. And so therefore, I need to bring the energy. I have to have more. I have to want it more than you.
Right.
Which is hard, right? But do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I get it
I need to
100%.
want more than you. And the issue happens is, that's why you drink coffee, is that when you have a team of people, my energy needs to be contagious to all 10 to 12 people.
True.
Does that make, and that's why sometimes it's tiring being a good coach who you need to be infectious.
Man.
You need to be infectious. And
Right.
like, you might just be starting it off in your career, but people need to know that you care before they care how much you know. So does that make, no one cares about what you know until they know you care. Does that make sense? Like, that's the number one thing, because it's hard to be a jerk to someone that you know really cares about you.
Exactly. That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, like, you were touching on the part where, man, you were going through something. You just hit on a great point that I wanted to transfer into. I want you to continue to talk about the energy transfer when it comes to coach to player, not just staff, because I think it's super important, like what you touched on, because I'm thinking like, man, like I was thinking about all the coaches that I've had, and the best coaches that I've had are the ones that are like sweating after the workouts. Yeah. And I realized that that's me. You know what I mean? Like I want to jump in there sometimes with my guys and like play defense on them and really get into it and give them all of my energy so much that I'm like exhausted. And one of the people you're always one of the guys like, B, you need to take a break. You know what I mean? Like you need to focus on your health and take a vacation or something like that. You know what I mean? Because even though it's good energy, it can be exhausting.
It's expending. You're expending that energy. And I think a lot of the energy comes, and you hear professional basketball players talk about this all the time, in the preparation. So it's like, okay, what do we need to do? So it's beforehand. Like you have to be like tip top in terms of your preparation.
Right.
Who is this guy? Injury history, but just basketball in general. Like who are you working with? And your preparation has to be second to none. You hear like the best basketball players in the world talk about this all the time. Same with the coaches. We're no exception.
So cutting in real quick. I don't mean to cut you off. How do you prepare as a trainer for a new client? So let's say, I'm going to give you, let's say Ja Morant is coming to Hong Kong.
Physically. You're talking about physical
tomorrow.
Part.
Everything.
Okay.
So Ja Morant's coming to Hong Kong tomorrow to work with you for a week.
Yep.
How do you get yourself prepared,
Yep.
To deal with such an athlete?
Okay. So the first thing that you need to do, which it can be intimidating for coaches, right? Is that you have to, before you even get into the physical part, the technical, tactical part, is that you have to try your best to understand them as a person. Like you have to, even though like someone at that level will be very guarded. But I would also expect someone at that level to understand, in order for the coach to help him to the utmost and to get everything out of me, I must first understand how you tick. Does that make sense? I need to understand you to a certain, like, what are his goals? How does this guy respond to high level energy, or do I need to be talking like this? Like I can talk like this, but at the same time, you can tell that I'm very into it, right? Like, so how is my feedback? Like, does he want a lot of feedback? Does he want like less feedback, but the feedback that I give him is pinpoint? Like that's the first thing.
Right.
Then obviously you need to be able to know, okay, physically, how does this guy move, right? What is it? John went through some injuries like lately, like not like a few months ago. Like these are the things that you need to know before he even steps in. Like you need to know hopefully you can get in touch with his people, and then you can get the list of things that he's had issue with. Then you have to know the style of play. Like he's obviously a very high tempo guy. He relies a lot on his athleticism, right? And so therefore physically you need to build a program that bulletproofs you can't bulletproof, but to reduce the chances of injury happening to things like ankles, knees, all that kind of stuff. That can look at Derrick Rose, right? Like those two are not too far off each other, right? Like you need to understand that. And then from a technical skill development and tactical perspective, what kind of sets are the Grizzlies running? Are they more like set-based team? Are they more of a conceptual team? Like what do they expect out of Ja? Then out of Ja, what does Ja want? Because oftentimes there can be conflicting interests, right? They can be very, very different. And is that like, okay, we obviously want this kid who's very young to be able to have a long, long career, right? So at some point, if he simply only relies on his athleticism, history shows that, look at Blake Griffin, look at Derrick Rose, like look at these guys who relied a lot on athleticism. How can we make sure that his career lasts longer than theirs? Not just that he's on the court, but he's thriving on the court. Right. Is it that he need? Okay, this is the tough part. Is it that he needs to score less points through like tough finishes, and that he needs to develop better pick and roll game where he's actually throwing out dimes rather than scoring all the points? Right. And like these are the conversations you need to have, right? But it all starts, Bios, with knowing the person, right? Knowing the person. So, as you can see, there's a lot of thought that has to go through all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
I hope I didn't bombard you with. I mean, that's a very long-winded
No,
answer.
that's-
But you're
that's-
asking me, okay, he's coming next week. This is my literally thought process that I would have to go through.
Right. That's a great look into the mind of a trainer. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's a lot.
But when you're dealing with someone on that level, right, you have to also be careful because like a lot of his salary may be depending on points he scored. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
you have to actually,
contracts, yeah.
you'll literally, in order to help him, you'll have to dig deep into
Right.
like sensitive information. You have to.
Right.
Because I just talked about longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But if that means that he scores 5 less points but gets 3 more assists, that could be conflicting with his financial well-being and taking care of his family, right?
True.
So you need to know these things in order to serve him in
Right.
the best of your ability.
True.
Have to.
True.
Right. And so, yeah. And I guess at the end of the day, like it's about building buy-in with your players, right? Because if you're asking for sensitive information, like I need to know how your contract is structured, right? Is it structured through like I need to know how it's structured so that I can help you the best. Because we need to prolong your career. Would you like to make an extra $100 million over the next, right? But in order to do that, does that mess with something that's currently happening in your contract? So, but then you have to buy into that sensitive information. That I'm not going to share that with people, even my family. That I'm not going to share that with just anybody, right?
Right.
And that, you have to build that buy-in and trust.
Right.
Have to, and I mean, yeah.
Great answers.
Thank you.
Great answers. You up or I'm up? I'm
No,
still
I
up.
mean, I would like to know how, because I feel like you're a very giving person, right? But at the same time, both of us are business owners.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance out philanthropic work with what you do? I mean, in order to grow your business, how do you grow your business and balance out philanthropic work at the same time?
It's tough, because I got into this because I wanted to help people.
Yep.
That's where my heart was.
Yep.
That's where my heart always will be. I mean, of course, there's a business side. It's tough, Every day you have to figure out how to balance this out. And how I do it is, I just follow my instincts. I feel like I'll give, and balance doesn't mean 50-50 all the time. Balance is whatever, balance can be, let's take the body, for example. You have to be a certain amount of, have to have a certain amount of acidity in your body, and it's not 50%, you know what I mean? Versus, alkaline
Right.
In your body. So it doesn't have to be, 50% of my finances go here or 50% of my time goes here when it comes to being, to giving back. You just have to find projects that make sense, and go where, as I said, it comes from the heart. It's not just like I'm throwing money here, just because I want to look like I'm giving back. You got to find projects that hit home, because then you're going to be more invested in those projects. So as you know, like a lot of times I'm working with students who are refugees,
Yeah.
like Zach and Benny and several other students. And, this hits home with me, these kids hit home with, it hits home with me of not having, enough finances to have a personal trainer, not having the information, not being wealthy, so, you find these things and it doesn't always have to be exactly tied into your life. I work with some students who I have no, mutual, how do I put that? I basically our backgrounds are not the same, but I still find the love in being able to help these people, help the kids, you know what I mean? So I don't think there will ever be a perfect balance as long as you are always looking to help people who can't help themselves. I think you're on the right way, because you're going to be, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you have to maintain your business. Otherwise you won't eat.
You can't
know
help
what I
people.
mean?
No, but
exactly,
you can help
exactly.
people. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And that's where it starts, is being able to help yourself.
Absolutely.
Before you help others.
100%.
Being able to be mentally stable yourself before you guide someone else or mentor someone else is very important. So yeah, man, it's a hard balance, I think, but at the end of the day, it's not, financially it's a hard balance, But at the end of the day, I think guys like you and us, like you and I, we will hit rock bottom helping someone else because we know how to build ourselves back up anyway. You know what I mean? Before we say, no, I'm not going to help you. I'm going to worry about my business. You know what I mean? So if I happen to hit rock bottom, I've been there before, so I know how to get back up when it comes to helping other people, get on their feet. And, it's, we have such a good network that I would never struggle financially when it comes to helping people, because if I can't help them, I can send them to you,
of course,
and I could send, someone, to someone else. I don't trust that many people, but, I can send them to someone that I trust.
I know we've been going on a long time, but I have two more questions for you that are very important. I want to talk about something because in the athletic world, it's a very macho world. It's a very, this is what I look like. This is me. This is strong me. There's not much vulnerability. But I want to talk about mental health. And I want to talk about mental health within basketball. So you have people like DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love coming out and talking about issues. So for me, again, I'm an extremely happy person. I have learning differences, so I have ADHD, as you can tell, and dyslexia. Okay. So I'm very public about that because in Hong Kong, that's looked at as you're a bad student or like you're trying to be bad, which completely doesn't make sense. And that's something, along with what I'm doing with the girls, I'm trying to change that part because there's a lot of very, very intelligent kids in China and in Hong Kong, and let's say many different places in the world that are not getting the proper attention because they're slightly different. But we don't want to talk about learning difference. I want to talk about mental well-being in basketball. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like maybe your own experience or maybe experiences that of friends. Like, do you think it's something that we need to voice out and it's not something that we need to be ashamed of? Because everyone goes through something.
Of course, it should be a part of the curriculum when it comes to athletics, But, this is what athletics is for in general. It's that outlet.
Yes.
And, basketball is, a microcosm of life. It's a game, within a game. And it teaches you bigger life lessons. And this is one of the things that I think you can do naturally, first of all, through sports. You can learn to become, more vocal, you know what I mean? Which will ultimately get out those thoughts. You learn to be more social, be more trusting, to be a better leader. All of these little nuances of basketball will allow you to basically relieve some of the pressures of, your these mental struggles that you're having. I know this is for me, like stress in general. So a lot of the stresses that I have that are pent up, I can get them out on the court. Now, there are some things that are not talked about, that we just don't know, that should be spoken on a lot more when it comes to mental health, when it comes to bullying and all these things that, are now starting to be brought to light and starting to become normalized in society. And as you talked about this whole macho thing, I got to be tough. It has to have balance. With sports, you do have to have some type of, a tough mentality to make it through, because at the end of the day, when it comes to sports, I don't care if it's high school, college, to professional, it's cutthroat. It's next man up mentality. If you can't do it, the next person is coming in. Now, what we have to be able to do is teach people how to handle that, how to handle rejection, how to handle stress, how to handle overload, how to handle success. All of the things that come into when it comes to mental health. And it's a lot. There's a lot that still hasn't even been touched on, even in mainstream when it comes to mental health and getting men and women, but we're talking about men's basketball, how to open up. There's a lot of stuff that I only talk about with my father, you know what I mean? And some of it's related to basketball that I would never talk to my teammates with, you know what I mean? And we have to have room to be able to do that without the negative the negative aspect of it. You know what I mean? The impact of, I said that and people know that about me. Now they're going to use it against me.
Yeah,
A lot of times that's what
that's
it
how
is.
they think, right?
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
okay, they think I'm weak. They think I'm soft. Now they're going to, it's going to affect me in a negative way.
But if I come at you and say, I go through this anxiety thing. I go through anxiety issues when I do this, and this. Like, this is when it kind of triggers and I get like little panic attacks.
Right.
Like, if that's what I was going to say to you. Do you feel like that builds trust between you and I because I'm being vulnerable towards you?
As a coach,
Both, teammate and coach.
I think it depends. Like, for me, everyone's different. Some people they might feel standoffish about it because they can't relate.
If I'm telling you about me,
exactly.
Okay.
Even if they're like, if you come to I know that if you come to some people with problems that they don't
know about,
okay, it might throw them off. Now,
because they don't know what to say.
Exactly.
Okay.
They don't know how to help you. They can't relate to it, or maybe they can relate to it and it's hitting a little bit too close to home. You know what I mean? And they don't want to release something about themselves. So, for me, it makes the bond closer. Like, you want to know what's driving someone, because those deep, dark, subconscious secrets that we're holding, like those are the things that we really need to unlock. That'll really release you as a human being, as an athlete as well. Because as you see these players like DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, after DeMar DeRozan, after he got that off his chest, it feels like it's a big relief now.
Yeah.
He can finally play the game he wants to play and live the life he wants to live without having that on his back so long. But I think the coaches should have more training in these areas, of how to deal with certain mental illnesses, anxiety issues, all these mental health things that we talk about today.
Yeah.
It'd be a great thing to see in the basketball circle, because when we were coming up,
There was none of this.
None of that.
Absolutely
It was
not.
just like, you soft, go home.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. You know what I mean? Like, you crying? You cry? All right. You cut.
Man, stop being so
right. Right. It was none of that. It was no such thing as mental health. If you said the word mental health, it was like you were in a straight jacket or something like that. But now it's normalized. It's talked about.
Yeah.
And we got to find some type of center ground for us to be able to open up about it, because if that stuff piles up and piles up and piles up, and which is going to to an extent with all of us, we all deal with issues. We all deal with our own personal issues, and then when you talk about sports just adds to it.
Yes.
It's like push and pull. It's like a lot of positive energy that you get, and you can release a lot of negative energy, but it's also a lot of stress.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I got to be the best. I got to make the team. I got to score this amount of points. I got to make this amount of money. It's a lot of stress. So we just need better leadership. And as I said, at the top, that'll trickle down to the coaches, the staff, to the trainers, and to the parents, which are the most important. The parents are the most important. The parents need to be educated about these things more than anybody, because the parents are going to be, the ones who ultimately get the final say in, how kids, move through life. So if the parents can learn more about, mental health and how sports, change students in this realm of what we're talking about, mental health, then I think it'll make a bigger impact, with the parents, because coaches can't do everything.
Right.
I'm only with a student for 1 to 2 hours.
Yep.
Even if I'm with them 5 days a week, the parents should be the real,
of course,
heroes. Should be the real ones to, have the final say. But I mean, of course, we can make an impact as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. Do you have any closing questions for me?
I had a few questions. Let me go through my phone.
But before we go, this is kind of this is not my typical kind of episode structure. But before we go, I want all my listeners to go and follow Brian, and I want them to look into the stuff he does. Where can they? What's the best place to find you, Bios?
So you guys can find me on Instagram at Bryant Austin 23. That's at BRYANT number 2 number 3. You can also follow us on YouTube at League MVP, and that's where you can find me.
I would suggest Brian, obviously, for basketball training. I would also suggest if you're looking for like motivational speaking or speaking to your school or company, I would definitely recommend him. And do you know what the cool thing about Biost is? That if you hit him up on IG, you're gonna get a response. Is that the IG is the best place?
Yeah.
If you hit him up on IG, you will definitely get a response. And you can come to Biost with some interesting questions, and he will still give you a good response. So all of my listeners, go follow him. He's one of my good friends, but again, he's an awesome person, an awesome coach.
Okay, appreciate that. I have one more question
Yep.
for you. When it comes to Hong Kong basketball and basketball in general, you can tackle the Hong Kong first. Where do you see the game going in the next 5 to 10 years? So we've had these issues with the Olympic squad and all this stuff, and we've had the
You're talking about Asian. Yeah.
So we've had the shutdown and all that stuff, and all the issues that the basketball programs have here in Hong Kong. Where do you see basketball going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Where do I see it going, or remedies to the situation? Or like
You can mix in both. Like where, like if in a positive way,
Yeah.
where would you like to see Hong Kong?
Well, obviously, I'd like to see it on the highest
go
stage.
but realistically, where do you think it would go?
Well, I think that there'll be a little bit more light shined on Hong Kong because there's talks of CBA team coming in. There's talks of a team in the Greater Bay Area, which is East Asia Super League. They're doing an awesome job there. So I think there'll be more light shined on the situation. But I feel like there's going to be a lot more work cut out for us in terms of getting to where we can potentially go. For me, I think that the best player development is coaching development because,
Right.
a player can only play for so long. Coach, how many generations can you impact? And I feel like we're talking about mentorship, we're talking about decision making, we're talking about advice, we're talking about all that kind of stuff. Who gives out that information and knowledge, right? It's the coach. And so one of my goals, is to, more importantly, beyond just building good players, is to build sound Chinese coaches. Because, it's great. What's going on is great. And I think that a lot of stuff that's going on right now is great. But could it be more widespread? Absolutely, it could be. Like, can we look over the curriculum that it takes to be a coach? Do you know what I mean? Like the exams that it takes to be a coach. Do you even need to take an exam to be a coach? Like all these things, these are things that you can question. But is there like a modern day curriculum that, because I know there are people that are hungry to become good coaches, right?
Right.
But for me, just for me, we need to build solid number of sound Hong Kong coaches. And that's not to say that they're not there now. There are. But I'm saying many, many more. Because that's how you create real change. And these coaches need to know what's going on the outside, meaning what's going on in Europe, what's going on in different countries in Europe, what's going on in America, what's going on in South America, what's going on in Australia. Like, what are the styles that are being played?
Right.
Like, honestly, look at what is going on in the world and then come to the conclusion on what is right for your player. So to give you an example, I have one girl who's 6'2". Everybody else after that girl, she's 14-year-old, she's 6'2". Great, right? That's the only one I have. Right. Everybody else is going to be 5'7". So I was just talking to you about going to an AAU tournament next July. I'm going to be up against some 6'4" girls. Now, if I sit back and play in a zone against those, I'm going to get my head bashed in.
Right.
Because they're going to take, if I'm the passive one, they're going to take full advantage of me. Right? So what do I need to do in order to play that? I'm not going to let the bully on the playground bully me. I'm going to be the aggressor. I have to be the aggressor. Because once the ball goes into the post, it's over pretty much.
Right.
So I'm going to be trapping them. I'm going to be playing full court pressure. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm not trying to go into that story. But what I'm trying to say is we need to have a curriculum where coaches are exposed, because I know they're out there, to different parts of basketball in the world, and then come to your own conclusion on the players that you're training and how they should play, right? But for the most part, basketball is not a super complicated sport. Obviously, it can go deep with analytics and all that kind of stuff, but get a solid foundation of what's out there in the world, and then put your little twist to it, right? Don't just follow the Real Madrid coach or the Fenerbahce coach because he does well. Like, take aspects of that and then apply it to whatever level that you train.
Right.
So I would love to see Hong Kong basketball. If Japan women's can come in second in the world, right? There's no excuse. There's no excuse anymore.
Right.
Right? Like, we're a first world country. We're a first world city. Like, the money is not the issue.
With all the resources.
With all the resources. It's not like we have a famine going on, except we lose to countries with famines going on in the countries. Like, so the long-winded answer, I think that, I would love to see more coaching development programs going on here. And I would love, because I know that there's a big population of young coaches that want to get better. As to where I see the global game going, I hope they're wrong, because then my kids won't be able to play at a high level. But it could very well be a bunch of 6'9" dudes running around shooting threes, and that's one of the theories. I hope that's not the case. But where do I see the game going, especially when you look at the NBA as opposed to like EuroLeague? The EuroLeague's very much set oriented. Like, it's quite rigid.
Right.
Whereas when you go back, I was just in the States. I was watching a Celtics Mavs game. Mm-hmm. And it's more like, I've talked to you about this, quick hitters. You do a quick hitter, you find the advantage from there. But then at the same time, you need to know how to take advantage of the advantage.
Exactly.
And play. And one thing I love about American basketball when it's played correctly is that they give a bunch of here's some guidelines, play within these guidelines.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying, Brad?
Exactly.
And it's very much improv.
Right.
And guess what? It's not going to look great when you're first learning it.
Right.
But by the time you're 21, you're going to be far beyond anything, because you can't scout that. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can kind of be like, all right, they like the Spain pick and roll. They come off like a wedge and they do go into Spain pick and roll, or ram and they go Spain pick and roll. But then it doesn't matter if the Spain pick and roll goes through, right? Like, there's 3-4 options off of that.
Exactly.
Whatever you do, I'm going to counter that.
Yep.
And that's the way it should be played. I hope I'm not
Right.
that's the way high level basketball is going to be played. And if it can be played with a bunch of 6'9" guys, well, that's going to be harder to guard them.
Impossible.
You got
to guard. 7-foot Kevin Durant's running around bringing the ball up court, and little old me 6'6".
Right. 6'1".
Right. Tough. My last question I have for you is, if you could take one player in the current NBA to train them for a month, who would it be? One player, and why?
Training physically or
all through the just helping them with strength and conditioning, basketball, all everything in general. One guy.
Yeah, that's
currently
tough.
playing.
Oh man, see, he didn't tell me he was going to give me this question. Okay, physically. Let me go one physical, one.
No. You get one guy.
Okay, all right. I'll tell you. Luka, and the reason it's Luka is because from a selfish perspective, I could really learn about how his brain works. Oh no, I'm sorry. I take that. Chris Paul.
Sorry, Luka. Will doesn't.
Yeah,
want you anymore.
That's okay. That's okay. After how Chris Paul's playing, because he's Chris Paul.
Chris Paul. Okay.
Because he is very much not a physical specimen. Like, he's
Right.
very, very athletic, obviously, right? Because compared to the normal guy. But he is not your Luka, who is, how tall is he? 6'7"? 6'8" as a point. Like, that's, okay. I would love to learn how his brain works.
Chris Paul?
Yes.
Man.
That comes from a selfish perspective. But
Right.
at the same time, it's a win-win situation, because I think I could do a lot for his body.
Right.
Because he's at that age.
Right.
But to be in the mind of Chris Paul, right? He moves in such a controlled way. Like, no one is going to rush him. like you are going to play at his pace.
Exactly.
And if you don't, he's going to make you pay for that. That is unbelievable. Like I think, I mean, I know I'm going to go long-winded, but I love transition offense, and I think that should be pushed. But then when everything is set in like this, like set half court offense,
the chess game.
If you know what you're doing and you're that first of all intelligent, and you're that skilled. Notice I said intelligence first, and then that skilled. Like, you can play at your own pace, and that's scary because you can play very, very slowly. Right. You can manipulate the defense into doing what you want to do.
Right.
And
you see that now with the series.
I see that now with the series.
Especially
what was the score?
Game 2.
What was the score? Oh.
Game 2 was scary what Chris Paul was doing. And he was doing it to Luka.
Yes. Actually, I was watching that in the gym. And those are arguably two of the best point guards. And I mean,
right.
And their style of play is not like athletic, right? It's not like Ja where he's going to jump over your center. Right. These guys are like hitting you with some high IQ stuff, right?
Yeah, it's like thinking 4, 5, 6 plays ahead. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I remember what happened in the first quarter. We're talking fourth quarter. You could tell Chris Paul remembered a few things that were happening, and he can remember.
That's the thing.
You know, a game plan. He can say, okay, Ja is exhausted, or not Ja, but Luka is exhausted, and he has to put out that input on offense as well. So I'm gonna put him in this pick and roll 3 or 4 times.
And he's
I'm gonna hug him.
Yep.
You know, these little extra bumps. You know, certain moves that you do, like when you drift to the side, which makes the defensive player go laterally.
Are you talking about when I'm setting up for the pick and roll?
For Chris Paul.
Yeah.
So Chris Paul setting up for the pick and roll.
Okay, got it. Yeah, of course you drift laterally. Yeah.
Right. So certain moves that he does forces Luka to that lateral movement, which expends energy.
Yes, for
sure. You know what I mean? So he'll put him in that situation 2 or 3 times in one possession just to drain him. You know what I mean? Now Luka has to come down and score offensively. So just like you said, it's like this whole mental game that's being played on a whole nother level when it comes to Chris Paul.
Just to go off of this, have you seen that detail on ESPN Plus? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes.
Yeah.
So going off of this, and I know we've been going but this is one of the last things I want to say is, you saw that, right? And he analyzed Scottie Pippen.
I didn't see the Scottie Pippen one.
Oh, is there other ones as well?
The detail?
Yeah. Who else does he analyze? I don't want to go off into. We'll figure this out. Sorry, guys. Me and Bryant are just talk. But he analyzes Scottie Pippen.
Okay.
And he looks at tendencies and I think that's extremely important when studying a player.
Right.
And I think it's extremely important. Sometimes you get film and you can study that.
Right.
But if you're playing in an AAU tournament you cannot. You have to on the fly be able. Maybe you see a game of this kid playing.
That's the best. That's one of the best ways to learn.
Do you know what I mean? And one of the things when I talk about intelligence all the time is like subtle things. So like say for example, I just came back from the States. I watched a bunch of NCAA games, Division I live. One of the things I realized is that Americans don't like to pressure the ball, meaning like.
Because you're gonna get blown by.
Well, that's
for a layup.
You know
sub.
What? You know what? I think like that's always
or exposed.
You know, that's always the answer. That's always the answer that people give me. But you're not thinking about how that guy feels.
Who?
The ball handler.
Oh, you're right.
Imagine having
being pressured.
Yes,
of
the
course.
whole game.
Can I give you the answer? Can you give my answer?
And I'll give you my answer to that. Yeah.
Okay, so my reason for guys not pressuring in today's game is because guys are saving energy for offense.
But can I ask? But I'm not just talking about NBA. I get it.
No, at all levels.
Okay,
at all
I
levels.
got you.
At all levels. At all levels.
That makes sense, and that's a good point. That's a good point. But like, say for example, I mean, the point guard, everything goes through the point guard.
Right.
Like, think about how much his performance is going down. And I'm not saying here's the thing. And a good coach would do this. So Will's gonna guard him, but Will's way out of shape. So we're gonna rotate on this guy.
Oh yeah.
So
I see that all the time.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Like, or even little things like, okay, I know you're right-handed dominant, and this is such a simple thing. I'm gonna force you to your left, and at a good level, his performance may only decrease 2 to 3%.
Right.
But in the long run of fatigue in the game, right? That's a lot.
Or even little tweaks like what they're doing with Luka now. Since we're on the
Trapping
Chris Paul.
on him?
No. They let him score a lot.
Okay.
So it is so funny to see it. You know, because Chris Paul after the game, he gave this little snarked answer about Luka scoring 45 points.
Yeah.
So in an aspect, they don't really let him score, but what they do is they shut off
everybody else,
his outlets.
Okay.
Yeah. So not only is that a lot of energy, you know, to be able to score, but it's also disrupting your own chemistry and your team. You know what I mean? Which weighs down on your own energy. So if I'm not getting my shooting guard his touches, I can feel that. I know I've played point guard many seasons. I can feel the energy on the side of my head when he's getting pissed, and he's not playing hard on defense as well. He's not giving me that energy that he usually gets. That he usually gives. Because he hasn't put up 4 or 5 threes, you know, tonight, or he hasn't, you know, I haven't, you know, dimed him up for a couple baskets. So in some of these plays, you can see that's happening in that Maverick series as well. So that would be an aspect of how to play a point guard as well, is force him to be the scorer. Especially if he's a guy who likes to distribute.
Right.
You know what I mean? Force him to be a scorer, even if he is a scorer.
Yeah.
Because teams have done this even to Kobe Bryant. You know what I mean? Where, okay, you're going to get 60 tonight, but nobody else is, and they're going to hate you for it. You know, the fans are going to love
60
you.
Points isn't
but this guy, your teammate's not, and your coach is not going to like you. You know what I mean? So, and that puts stress on your team, on the other team as well. So there's many different, you know, ways of going about how to attack it.
But I think learning from someone that experienced it, I mean, going back to your question about who would I pick, is like, I think that's huge. And every player has a certain rhythm. Do you know what I mean? Every player has their own rhythm. And the best players on defense or offense can always adjust that rhythm so that they're unpredictable.
Right.
And the unpredictability, the deceptiveness,
right.
It's more important than speed. It's more important than speed. And unfortunately, as a strength and conditioning coach, like, you can work on all the change direction, stop and start that you want, but it comes from experience.
It does.
Like, I can teach you, but if I teach you how to stop and start better, I can. You may not know when to stop and start.
Right.
And that comes from experience.
Right.
And that comes from being a student of the game and going back and being so obsessed with the game that you go to pick up at Southern or whatever, and you're there filming. You have someone filming the game for you because you want to see, like, how you can get better.
Right. So I had a conversation about this last season. We're gonna wrap it up.
Yep.
But I had a conversation with my father about this.
Yep.
And he's like, "What do you add into your game?" And it was that whole
The studying thing.
Not just the studying, just the pace,
Right.
the rhythm of being able to mix up my rhythm in the worst of times, like when I'm exhausted or when a guy is pressuring me or when I'm not as confident in my jump shot. What can I do next to throw off the defense rhythm wise? And I would work on that. You know what I mean? I would watch players who can mix up their rhythm. You know, like you said, Chris Paul can mix up his rhythm. Who else? Magic Johnson, Steve Nash was really good at changing up, you know, his pace.
South Africa.
Yes. Is Steve Nash from South Africa? Is he, or is he from Canada?
I cannot believe he calls himself a basketball fan or whatever.
I don't know how he threw that question out.
It's a good question.
This guy,
and
man.
I knew the first time I saw that video that he was going to answer Canada. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's certain players that, you know, you want to learn from, and I even picked up off some high school players, you know, some college players that I was watching. Like, man, he's got a great change of pace. He's got a great, you know, rhythm, but he responds well when there's full court pressure, or because, like you said, a good coach will rotate guys on you. He'll rotate the crazy guy who likes to foul on you. Then he'll rotate the guy who likes to give you a little cushion, who's going to give you the jumper, you know what I mean? Then he'll rotate a bigger, taller 6'10" guy on you. He'll keep rotating guys on you, so that'll throw off your rhythm. And as you said, you know, you want to learn how to control your own rhythm, your own pace, to be able to, you know, counteract what the defense is going to do for you. So I spent a lot of time watching film on other guys and then watching myself, like just watching, like, man, that was terrible. Like, how did you let that guy speed you up? You know, you need to slow down here and you need to do this here. You need to pin him here when you come off the pick and roll so you can have a little bit more time to, you know, make a pass to the corner or get all the way to the basket or take contact. And, you know, there's so many different, you know, nuances to what we're talking about, just this in general of pace and timing. where you can save energy, you can draw fouls, you can create for other players.
Yeah.
It's just so many things that you can do from that aspect, and you can have longevity with your career.
Sure.
Instead of, as you said, speed.
Yeah.
I was thinking from that aspect, how can I get faster? And I'm like, no, it's not about me going faster. It's about, how can I have a different rhythm than the defense? And I might not be all, super fast. You know what I mean?
Luka, I wouldn't say like Luka. They're both quick, but Luka and Chris Paul are definitely not like what I would consider explosive.
Right. They're
So
not John Morant. Yeah. Right. Correct.
Amazing. We've been going on for a
man.
while.
Yeah. We've been going. We gonna have to. I have like 30 more questions.
No,
for this guy,
seriously, we have to do this again. But
do it again.
this episode went even better than I thought. This joint thing is good. It's always good to sit down and catch up with a good friend and just talk about life things. We could have all had dinner and then come back and do it 2 more hours, but we'll make this happen again.
Before we get off, Will Lowe with Strive Fitness here, my good brother, very intelligent, knows the game, has tremendous amount of passion. I respect him more than so many people that I've met throughout my lifetime. This ultimate professional here. Tell us where we can reach you with your social media.
So if you want to reach me directly, probably the best way is like Brian's Instagram. It's Will, WILLVLO. I usually always respond to that. And then if you want to learn more about Strive Fitness, it would be Strive, STRIVE, basketball.com. And then you can find out more about what our gym is doing.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Awesome. Thank you so much.